Okay, I want you to imagine pushing your physical body almost entirely without sleep for 95 hours and 11 minutes. I mean, just pause for a second and let that number really sink in. We are talking about nearly 4 straight days of continuous, agonizing forward motion. Like, how does a human being even survive that, let alone push through the absolute darkest limits of exhaustion?
Well, the answer to surviving that kind of physical trauma? It actually isn't found in a gym. It's found in this realization from Lyndsey Blair, the ultra-endurance athlete who completed this seemingly impossible feat. She says, "My mind is way stronger than my athletic ability. I will not quit till I get there." And you know, that stubbornness, that absolute refusal to tap out, that's the core thesis of what we're looking at today. True ultra-endurance, it isn't just a physical game. It is almost entirely a mental one.
So, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are going to break down an absolutely epic journey of human resilience. We're looking at Lyndsey Blair's survival of the Endoman Arch-to-Arc triathlon, and more importantly, how she completely mastered the mental game to actually pull it off.
And this idea perfectly illustrates Lyndsey's whole approach. She attributes her success to a formula of 80% mindset and 20% physical conditioning. Now, don't get me wrong, the physical training is immense. I mean, you have to be incredibly fit for this. But as she points out, there are way better, faster athletes out there who physically could do what she did, but they just lack the mental strength to endure the sheer isolation and suffering. Preparing for something of this crazy scale, it requires visualizing the pain and literally negotiating with it long before you ever reach the starting line.
But you gotta wonder, where does that kind of mental strength even come from? Well, for Lyndsey, who is a mother of 3 based out of Scotland, it's super deeply rooted. She was inspired early on by her dad, a hardcore ultra runner who used to just disappear into the Scottish mountains for days at a time. But there's also a really profound emotional anchor here. She actually only got into open water swimming to support her best friend, Jillian, who was raising money for cancer support. Tragically, Jillian passed away back in 2018. So today, when Lyndsey races, she does it knowing Jillian would have gently pushed her out of her comfort zone. And that deep sense of purpose, it acts as literal rocket fuel for her stubbornness.
All right, part 1, the Crucible Enduroman Arch-to-Arc.
So with that mental foundation laid out, let's take a look at the actual challenge itself. The geographical scale of this event is it's overwhelming. This is not just your average triathlon. It's practically a cross-country migration. Stage 1 is a grueling 87-mile run, starting right at Marble Arch in London and going all the way down to Dover. Stage 2 is the notorious freezing English Channel swim. And finally, Stage 3 is a 181-mile cycle from Calais all the way to the Arc de Triomphe in Paris. Let's start by looking at Stage 1. Lyndsey began her 87-mile run at 8:30 p.m. in London. And yeah, that means she was running straight into the dead of night. She spent hours navigating these pitch-black, overgrown paths with nothing but a tiny headlamp, literally tripping over fallen apples in the dark. And then, at around the 110-kilometer mark, her nutrition just went completely off, which resulted in violent sickness. Her team actually had to force a 40-minute mandatory rest just to stabilize her. Yet despite that massive physical collapse, she somehow bounced back to reach Dover in under 23 hours, almost entirely without a wink of sleep.
Which brings us to part 2, the abyss, the English Channel. Now, the run was brutal, but it was under her control. The ocean, though, that is a different beast entirely. Lyndsey went in expecting a pretty calm, steady 10-hour swim, and for the first few hours it actually was perfect. But by hour 12, her GPS watch died. She thought she was only a few kilometers from France, right? But in reality, the weather had rapidly and violently deteriorated. The wind spiked to a crazy 17 knots, which are conditions that pilots usually won't even sail in. The waves were getting so high that she'd take a breath right next to her support boat, put her head down to swim, and a second later look up to see the boat was suddenly 15 meters away.
So after 14 solid hours of swimming in the pitch black, getting completely battered by freezing waves, and making absolutely zero forward progress against the tide, she swam up to the boat. She looked right up at the official, and in a state of genuine desperation, she asked this really tense life-or-death question: is this swimmable?
And the official's response was just a brutal ultimatum. He looked down and told her, "It is, but I need you to give me 30 minutes really, really hard." Now, Lyndsey knew that if she showed even an ounce of weakness or negativity in that moment, they would literally pull her from the water for her own safety. So she dug deep. And she didn't just give him 30 minutes, she put her head down and sprinted against that current for over 5 relentless, agonizing hours.
Which finally brings us to this staggering final time in the water, 19 hours and 6 minutes. Think about that. That's nearly double her initial expectation. That is almost an entire day straight of fighting a violent ocean, trapped alone in her own head, just absolutely refusing to quit.
And as you can imagine, the physical toll was absolute. When she finally reached the shores of France, she tried to stand up, but her legs had literally forgotten how to support her body weight. Her body had completely failed, but her mind? Her mind had won. She literally had to crawl her way onto the sandy beach.
But remember, she wasn't done. She still had a 181-mile cycle ahead of her, and she had packed light summer cycling gear, fully expecting a breezy, sunny 25-degree ride into Paris. But the reality? Well, Mother Nature definitely had other plans. We're talking torrential downpours, violent crosswinds, and dodging massive transport trucks in the dark, on the wrong side of the road, all while being a severely exhausted 50-kilo athlete.
Yet, despite literally everything going wrong, her crew later told her, in complete admiration, "You never complained once." I mean, she just grabbed a quick 90-minute nap in the back of a rain-battered camper van and kept right on pedaling. To Lyndsey, complaining just wasn't an option. She was simply deeply grateful to her crew and just for the opportunity to even be out there doing it.
And you know, that immense gratitude, that sheer stubbornness, it carried her all the way to the Arc de Triomphe in Paris. She actually became the first Scottish person ever to complete the Endoman Arch to Arc. And along the way, she raised an absolutely incredible £27,000 for cancer and hospitality charities. It is just an unbelievable triumph of the human spirit.
All right, let's move into part 3, the Mindset Toolkit.
So, the big question is, how do we actually take this seemingly superhuman achievement and apply it to our own daily lives? Well, Lyndsey distills her ultra-endurance success into 3 highly actionable mindset principles. We've got consistency over intensity, process over outcome, and self-accountability. Let's break these down real quick. First up, consistency over intensity. Listen, you don't always need to have the absolute perfect workout or be 100% motivated all the time. Forward momentum, no matter how ridiculously slow it might feel, is what actually matters. As Lyndsey says, sometimes the absolute hardest part of going for a run is literally just putting on your shoes. We all have those days, right? But if you just show up, the work gets done.
Second principle is process over outcome. If you focus on how incredibly far away the finish line is, like, say, swimming in the pitch black for 19 hours, it is going to break you. But if you focus strictly on the immediate next step, like taking just one more stroke or finishing one more feed, the outcome takes care of itself. Just follow the process and you will eventually get there.
And finally, self-accountability. True discipline is inherently solitary. You cannot rely on other people to push you out the door. As Lyndsey, brutally and honestly quite hilariously, reminds us, no one wants to come for a 10-hour swim with you. You have to take ultimate responsibility for your own preparation and your own suffering.
Which really brings us to our final thought. Lyndsey proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that your body will do almost anything your mind fiercely commands it to do. So I want to leave you with this question today. If your mind truly controls the limits of what's possible, what challenge in your own life are you giving up on way too soon? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep pushing your own limits, and I'll see you next time.